In this world, there are many first-person shooters. There are those who enjoy more classic experiences such as Doom, or perhaps they await the next Call of Duty, just like every year. Or maybe even... But in a world filled with these games, there's one to me that truly stands out among the rest. Civil War, Secret Missions. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm of course talking about Borderlands, a game series once near and dear to my heart, and still is, but it's lost some of its luster. How, you may wonder, could me, a gamer, grow to have such a distaste for a game I once loved? That's what I hope to delve into today, because though the old titles still hold up incredibly well to me, it's the newer titles where the problems begin to arise. For this video, I'll only be talking about the main series games, as I feel they're the most relevant for the topic. You can make an argument for the pre-sequel being a main series game, but I just personally don't see it that way, but it may get its own video in the future. But enough blabbing, let's get into my love-hate relationship with Borderlands. Hi-oh! Borderlands was a game released on October 20th, 2009 by a small and relatively unknown studio known as Gearbox Software. While somewhat of a niche title, it was relatively well received. Many enjoyed its carefree sense of humor and quirky characters, while others enjoy the wide variety of enemies and locations you get to fight them in. But what Borderlands is best known for is easily its massive arsenal of randomly generated weapons. 87 bazillion guns! Well, more like a little over 17 million, but who's counting? This was the main selling point for Borderlands, as nothing like this had ever been seen before. While there were looter shooters before Borderlands, such as Hellgate London, this is the game that greatly popularized it and made it the phenomenon it is today. Now, as good as Borderlands was, it wasn't all sunshine and rocket launchers. It had plenty of problems. The story, while it had a lot of potential, seemed very half-baked and incomplete, with a villain so forgettable that the game literally kills her off before you even fight her. Many people also saw the gameplay as pretty mediocre, and while I didn't personally have a big problem with it, I can see where they're coming from. It doesn't really try to do anything special, besides maybe the character abilities. But I thought it was a very solid game. I also personally think it has one of the best DLCs in the entire series, the Secret Armory of General Knox. It was a nice introduction to the universe of Borderlands. Characters like Claptrap, Scooter, and Mad Moxie would become mainstays in the series. It felt genuinely funny and clever, with plenty of pop culture references, but without solely relying on them to be funny. But it wasn't so oversaturated with humor. It had plenty of serious and quiet moments. Not every character was made to be a haha funny meme machine, to constantly bombard you with jokes in the hopes to at least get as little as a chuckle out of you. Maybe they weren't quite as in-depth as future characters, but I'd take them any day over some of the characters we're going to talk about later. Overall, while Borderlands 1 had plenty of shortcomings, I think it was a solid starting point. It established the lore, the characters, and the main appeal of the game, the guns. And most importantly, it would pave the way to a sequel that would not only fix the problems from the first game, but put Borderlands on the map as a worthy contender in the FPS market.
Oh, smoking Jesus titty cinnamon, that is a monster! That's gonna be sweet!
Oh baby, here we are. On September 18th, 2012, Borderlands 2 was released, and in this humble man's opinion, this was peak Borderlands. Everything was improved: the graphics, gameplay, and most importantly, the story. The characters were far more in-depth and animated, there was far more backstory added to every part of the game, and most importantly, you remember when I said the villain in the first game was pretty boring and forgettable? Well, fear not, my friends. Allow me to introduce you to a man. A man so evil that he'd ask for a water cup and get Sprite. He is cruel. He is merciless. And he is so friggin' handsome. Handsome Jack. Handsome Jack is by far one of the best written villains in video game history. Heck, I think he's one of the best written overall characters in video game history. He just has so much personality, unlike the blank slate that was Commander Steel in the first game. He's a narcissistic, larger-than-life egomaniac, constantly bragging about his wealth, power, and handsome mug. He's genuinely funny and charming, providing plenty of entertaining banter over the echo during your travels. This guy has so many memorable voice lines, it's not even funny anymore. Like towards the beginning of the game, when he brags to the player about his purchase of a diamond pony, then naming it only the most elegant name he could think of. Butt Stallion.
Butt Stallion says hello.
But don't let his charm and sense of humor fool you. Jack is a monster. He's extremely cruel to the people of Pandora, both bandits and normal citizens alike. He clears out entire towns and settlements as he sees anybody living on Pandora as a filthy bandit and a plague to the planet. All the while still thinking that he's the good guy, the one doing the right thing. He has truly scary and quiet moments, moments when he loses his temper, or moments when he shows just how psychotic he really is. But I don't want to spend this entire section just talking about Jack, but just know, the impact that Handsome Jack had on the entire Borderlands franchise cannot be understated. Now, as far as the other characters, Borderlands 2 greatly improves here too. Fan favorites from the first game such as Claptrap, Moxie, Marcus, Scooter, and others return. The old Vault Hunters from the first game return as pivotal characters to the main story. And we learn a lot more about these characters and their backstories through both main and side quests and hidden echo logs around all of the maps, as well as more hidden secrets for those who want to dive deeper into the lore. There are also plenty of new characters that would become fan favorites across all the games, such as Sir Hammerlock, Tiny Tina, and Ellie. We also have 6 new Vault Hunters. We have Axton the Commando, Maya the Siren, Salvador the Gunzerker, and Zero the Assassin as our base game Vault Hunters. Then we have Krieg the Psycho and Gage the Necromancer as DLC characters. Each of these Vault Hunters have a distinct personality, making playing each one a unique experience. Overall, the story has a lot more going on. Instead of the Vault Hunters just going after the vaults for their own good, now you're stuck in the middle of a war. A war between the Crimson Raiders, a resistance group led by Roland, one of the Vault Hunters from the first game, as well as the other previous Vault Hunters being head members of the Resistance, and Hyperion, a massive weapons corporation led by Handsome Jack. The Raiders want to stop Handsome Jack from reaching the vault and awakening an ancient beast known as the Warrior, which Jack wants to use to wipe out the inhabitants of Pandora. Jack says this is the only way to save Pandora, and it is the right thing to do, while obviously everybody else sees this as a monstrous act, and that not everybody on Pandora is a bad person. And this is where you, the player, come in. You are led by this mysterious voice of a woman, who was also present in the first game. She is known as Angel, and is later revealed to be Jack's daughter. She leads you to join the Crimson Raiders, and wants you to stop her father from finding the vault first, as well as to save her, as Jack has her captured to harness her power to open the vault. Because Angel is a siren, which are individuals comprised almost entirely of women who have mysterious powers connected to the vaults. So, as the Vault Hunter, it is your job to go and do all that. There's a whole lot more to the story than that, but I'm just going to leave it there since I don't want to spend this entire time only talking about the story. Though I wanted to spend a decent amount of time on it, as this is the thing that later Borderlands games just don't recapture nearly as well as this game. And I know that it's really hard to capture lightning in a bottle twice, but even still, the story we would get after this was far below my and other Borderlands fans' expectations. But we'll get there when we get there. As far as the gameplay, though it wasn't revolutionary, was a nice improvement on the first game. Specifically to me, the guns in Borderlands 2 feel that they actually shoot where you point them at, whereas in the original Borderlands, sometimes it seemed that the bullets could just stray off in random directions for no apparent reason. Also, the character abilities feel a lot more impactful. In the first game, the only character ability that felt really impactful was Lilith's Phase Walk, whereas the other characters' abilities felt kinda underpowered. Roland's turret was a decent utility tool, but outside of that, it really didn't do much. On Mordecai, Bloodwing did decent damage towards the beginning of the game, but at endgame, he barely tickled the enemies. And Brick's Berserk ability, while also being decent towards the beginning of the game, at endgame it just became completely useless, even with a build centered around it. But now in Borderlands 2, I feel pretty much all of the character abilities have their place in the sandbox, and can be used to great effect. The old carefree sense of humor is also back in this game, and is better than ever in my opinion. But again, the game doesn't feel so oversaturated with humor. It still has plenty of serious and quiet moments that make the game feel more deep and dynamic. In addition, the side quests in this game are such a big improvement. While Borderlands 1 side quests weren't bad, they did feel a little bit half-baked, with many of them being simple fetch quests without really much going on. But many of the side quests in Borderlands 2 are a lot more in-depth and interesting, really letting you delve deep in their own mini stories. But there are a lot of side quests that are meant to just be short and goofy. Probably one of the most well-known quests is the quest known as Shoot This Guy in the Face. Yes, that's the actual name of the side quest. In the map 1000 Cuts, you'll find a man named Face McShooty, who is dancing around and screaming about how he wished somebody would just come up to him and shoot him in the face. Accepting his side quest will cause him to stand there and continually scream at you to shoot him in the face. Shooting him anywhere else will not do anything to him and cause him to yell at you about not doing what he wants. So finally, you have absolutely no choice but to give in to what he wants and shoot him right in the dome. Doing this will make him fall over, scream thank you, and allow you to turn in the mission. To me, this encapsulates what Borderlands is. It's insane mayhem that doesn't make much sense, but is fun to go along with anyways. Overall, Borderlands 2 wasn't a perfect game. It had plenty of flaws, especially at launch, but there's a reason that it's still my favorite Borderlands experience to this day. All the fundamental things that a game needs to get right, it got right and added its own special little twist to it. But I think we've spent enough time with Borderlands 2, so now it's time to move on to the final game that we're going to talk about today.
This is totally uncool.
So here we are, Numero Trace. The first we would see or even hear about this game was 5 years after the release of Borderlands 2 at a game developers conference back in 2017, when Gearbox was showing off a tech demo for the next game using Unreal Engine 4. After this, it would be pretty much radio silence for the next couple years, until finally in early 2019 when we got the Mask of Mayhem teaser trailer, which wouldn't reveal much besides telling us some of the characters that would be in Borderlands 3. But it wouldn't be long before we got a buffet of trailers showing us many different parts of the game. But enough about the before, because finally, on September 13th, 2019, Borderlands 3 was released. This was by far the most anticipated game in the entire franchise, and I was on board. I'd loved all the games that had released before this, and I couldn't wait until the next release. And finally, when it did release, it felt almost unreal, because I had waited so long for it, and it felt like it would never release. And this was a sentiment shared by pretty much the entire community. But little did we know, while Borderlands 3 ended up being a pretty good game, there would be a lot of things that it would fail on that were key factors that made Borderlands 2 so good. But before I talk about the negatives, I do want to talk about the positives. The biggest improvements were by far to the gameplay. Never had the controls felt so smooth and natural, finally catching up with more modern shooters. Gearbox also introduced more advanced movement with mantling and sliding, which made combat so much more dynamic and made traversing each area so much better. The environments were also made to be more interactable to enhance the combat, with barrels being able to be hit or kicked, sending them flying into enemies, or water being able to be electrocuted using a shock weapon or barrel. The enemies also reflected these improvements, with each enemy type having bunches of variants, all with their own distinct traits and attacks. The weapons also felt great in this game, with each manufacturer retaining their iconic gimmicks while touching and improving on all of them. This would all combine to create the best Borderlands combat experience to date. Other improvements I like are the graphics, the addition of the takedowns, and Reese's mustache. But now I want to get into the things that bring this game down severely, for me at least. Now I could talk about a bunch of the problems at launch, like the issues with gun balancing, or legendaries dropping way too frequently, or something like the Guardian takedown that is way too hard for how unrewarding it is. But I'm sure you've already guessed what my main issue with this game is. It's the story and some of the characters in it. And just to get into the first part of why the story flops, let me just show you this. Wow, Handsome Jack is the coolest villain ever. Hey there, sport, what you playing with there? Oh hey Gearbox, I'm still playing Borderlands 2 and still really enjoying Handsome Jack as the villain. That's great, champ, but guess what? I got a little surprise for you. Oh boy, what is it? I can't wait. Well, I know it's been a while since I've crafted up a cool new villain for you, so I went ahead and crafted up 2 cool new villains. Wow, 2 new villains? If they're anything like Handsome Jack, this is gonna be awesome. Oh, well, they look kinda cool, I guess. Who are they? These are the Calypso twins. This is Tyrene, and this is Troy. And you wanna know what's really cool about them? They're streamers! Oh, you kids love streamers nowadays, right? You thought Handsome Jack was funny. Wait till you get a load of these guys. They're a riot. They say all kinds of hilarious things like skag butts, turd farmer, and my personal favorite, amazeballs. I think I'll just stick with Handsome Jack. The Calypso twins. Let me just get straight to the point. These guys suck. And let me be clear, this isn't me bashing the voice actors, as they are very talented people, but it's the writing that really sends these guys down the drain. The game tries so hard to get you to think these guys are cool or funny or hip, but they're just not. I don't know if they thought making them streamers would appeal to the modern day demographic, but all it kind of does is make it cringy the way it's implemented. They're constantly making these awful jokes and saying a bunch of Gen Z slang words like fam and crap, and they think it's hilarious, but it's just so cringy. They don't even feel like a threat. Like, it's just impossible to take these guys seriously. They don't even feel like villains. You know what they feel like? They feel like unfunny, cringy, entitled streamers. So at least Gearbox got the streamer part sort of correct. But if I wanted to watch unfunny, cringy, entitled streamers, all I have to do is log on to Twitch and take my pick. I don't have to play a game for it. And that's not me saying every streamer is like that. Of course not. Obviously not. But let's just be honest with ourselves. They're out there. Now, I wasn't expecting the Calypsos to be as good or better than Handsome Jack. Because let's face it, doing that would be harder than getting me within even half a football field of a spider. Because screw spiders, they're the devil. But I definitely had higher expectations than what we ultimately got. Honestly, I would take Commander Steel from the first game over these goofballs. They're that annoying. But let's not just focus on these guys the whole time. It's the writing in general in this game that just falls so flat for me. So many of the characters in this game literally feel like they were implemented just to make jokes. Like Vaughn and Reese, returning characters from Tales from the Borderlands. It seems like every single second these guys are on screen, it is just a constant bombardment of jokes, without a single moment where you can take them or anything around them seriously. Vaughn is constantly talking about his rippling pecs or some weird thing to do with bandits. And with Reese, it's always some kind of joke about him being a corporate businessman or something like that. Like, haha, look at me, I'm a corporate douchebag. Like, get out of here. And I get it that humor is a big part of the Borderlands franchise, but when it is constant and never ending like it is in this game, it gets so tiresome. But let's move on from that. So we all know that Tiny Tina, Brick, and Mordecai all came together to form this little group called the B Team. Were you hoping that they'd play a big, integral role in the entire story? Well, screw you, they get one main mission and one side mission, and that's it. I mean, come on, Gearbox. These are some of the most iconic characters in the entire series, and you're gonna relegate them to one main mission and one side mission? What a joke. You want writing that pretty much relies on pop culture references to be funny? Well, here's the game for you. Actual clever jokes are so much fewer and far between than in past games. It feels so much less clever and, oddly enough, more immature in a bad way. I mean, half the time it feels like I'm listening to a bunch of high schoolers trying to make stupid jokes. Like some of the characters in this game, I know people who act just like them, and guess what? I don't particularly like to be around them that much. I mean, I'm terrified to think of the next game. I mean, in the next game, the characters are probably going to be spitting brain rot like Skibbity Toilet Ohio Gyat Riz and stupid garbage like that. But I'm going to stop ranting about all that, because there is one more sin that the developers have put into this game that I have to talk about. And let me just give you a hint. It's a character. A character so migraine-inducingly obnoxious, so painfully unfunny, and so prevalent throughout the game that once you meet her, she will just ruin almost every part of the story going forward. So who am I talking about? Well, if you haven't already guessed, it's Ava. Holy crap. Where do I even begin with this one? Ava is single-handedly and I repeat, the most annoying, infuriating character in any video game I've ever played. She is a mixture of a bratty teenage girl, any annoying Gen Z kid, and every stupid, entitled, apprentice-like character in every video game. From the moment you meet her on Athenas, she shows her annoying behavior. When she has the simple task of opening a stupid gate and she goes up to it and she's all like, "You got nothing, gate, you got nothing. Just shut up, you're not funny or cool." She is constantly going against Maya's orders when Maya is only trying to keep her safe. "Ava, guard the library." No. "Ava, don't go in the vault." No. And in that vault, Maya ends up getting killed, which I partly honestly think was Ava's fault, because if she didn't have to sit there arguing with Ava, she might have been able to leave before the Calypsos even showed up. And after she does die, Ava puts the blame on Lilith. Like, how brain dead are you? And don't even get me started with the fact that somehow, after everything, after Ava has shown that she is irresponsible and incapable, that for some reason Lilith puts her in charge after she goes to flying to the freaking moon to stop it from destroying Pandora. I'm sorry it got a little intense right there, but you just have to understand that it amazes me how one character can just ruin a story like that. And I know that there's plenty of people out there that probably like Ava, and that's completely fine. If you like something that I don't, then that's not the end of the world. But personally, I just can't stand her. And that goes for this whole game. Like, if you like this game's entire story, then to each their own. But for me, it just does so much more wrong than it does right. And I might get some flack for some of my opinions, but I just don't care. They're my opinions, and so I don't really care what people think about them. But just to conclude, Borderlands 3 did get a lot right, don't get me wrong. The gameplay is miles ahead of the other Borderlands games, and the story isn't all bad. It does have good moments, and the things like the takedowns, trials, arms race, and stuff like that is super awesome. But it's still just not enough to make me ignore those flaws in the characters, dialogue, and story. And here's hoping that it is greatly improved in the next game. I know there were some important details in the pre-sequel and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, but I didn't really want to delve into those. I just wanted to stick with the main game stuff, but there might be a video coming for those separately. All in all, Borderlands is still one of my favorite franchises out there, but in this old-time fan's opinion, I just feel like it's kind of starting to lose its way a little bit, and I hope that it doesn't continue to stray so far. But I guess we'll just have to wait for Borderlands 4. So thank you all so much for watching, and cue the outro.